In 1920, the United States tried something radical, an experiment on a national scale. They passed a law intended to purify the soul of the nation. They banned alcohol, every bottle, every barrel, every drop. The goal was a more moral, more sober, more productive America. What followed wasn't peace. It was profit. An entire industry was handed over from legitimate businesses to the criminal underworld. This is the story of how Prohibition didn't just fail, it backfired spectacularly, creating the American Mafia's golden age. Let's rewind. The early 20th century was a time of great social change. Movements for temperance, driven largely by moral and religious groups, had been gaining steam for decades. They argued that alcohol was the root of society's problems: poverty, crime, domestic abuse. They painted a picture of a sober utopia, and in 1920, they won. The 18th Amendment to the Constitution was ratified, making the production, transport, and sale of intoxicating liquors illegal. The Volstead Act provided the means for federal enforcement. On paper, America was dry, but a law cannot erase a desire. The goal was morality, but the result was opportunity. Millions of Americans simply didn't agree with the law. They had been drinking for generations. It was part of celebrations, meals, and social life. And when the legitimate supply disappeared overnight, an enormous black market was born. The demand didn't just vanish. It went underground, and it grew more intense. Suddenly, a simple bottle of whiskey wasn't just a drink. It was an act of defiance, a thrill. And where there is high demand and no legal supply, prices skyrocket. Alcohol became more valuable than ever. Someone had to supply it. The American landscape transformed. The corner tavern, once a public gathering spot, vanished. In its place, something far more exclusive and exciting appeared: the speakeasy, hidden behind secret doors, down unmarked alleyways, in the basements of seemingly ordinary businesses. A new nightlife culture blossomed. To get in, you needed a password or a connection. Inside, the jazz was hot, the dancing was wild, and the illegal liquor flowed freely. From New York to Chicago, Los Angeles to New Orleans, tens of thousands of these hidden bars thrived. It wasn't just men, either. Speakeasies broke social taboos, welcoming women in a way traditional saloons never had. This wasn't just about drinking. It was a cultural revolution fueled by forbidden fruit. But who was picking that fruit? Who was brave enough, organized enough, and ruthless enough to supply this thirsty nation? Enter the Mafia. Before Prohibition, organized crime in America was mostly a local affair. Small-time gangs running extortion rackets, gambling rings, and prostitution. They were a nuisance, but not a national threat. The 18th Amendment changed everything. It was the greatest gift the U.S. government ever gave them. The Mafia already had the perfect infrastructure in place. Established networks, a strict code of loyalty, and most importantly, omerta, the code of silence. They were experts in operating outside the law. Suddenly, their skills were in high demand for a product that everyone wanted. They started smuggling, bringing in high-quality liquor from Canada, Mexico, and the Caribbean by sea and land. These smugglers were known as rum runners and bootleggers. They used fast boats to outrun the Coast Guard and fleets of trucks to move the product inland. But smuggling was just the first step. They also took over breweries and distilleries, secretly producing their own low-grade alcohol, sometimes with dangerous results. They controlled the transportation, the warehouses, and the distribution networks that fed the speakeasies. What was once a collection of street gangs became a vertically integrated corporate enterprise. Organized crime became big business. This new empire was built in the great American cities. In New York, the five families, the Bonanno, Colombo, Gambino, Genovese, and Lucchese initially competed violently for control of the lucrative bootlegging rackets. But visionary mobsters like Charles Lucky Luciano saw that constant warfare was bad for business. He pushed for the creation of the Commission, a board of directors for the Mafia that settled disputes and divided territories. They turned chaos into a coordinated national syndicate. Meanwhile, in Chicago, one man would become the face of Prohibition-era crime, Al Capone. He didn't just run a gang, he ran the city. Capone controlled the bootlegging, gambling, and brothels with an iron fist, backed by an army of loyal gunmen. He was charming in public, a philanthropist to some, but utterly ruthless behind the scenes. His organization was said to gross over $100 million a year, that's billions in today's money. And this pattern repeated nationwide. The profits from illegal alcohol were so immense that they could afford to buy silence and cooperation. Corruption became rampant, reaching deep into police departments, courtrooms, and city halls. Politicians and police officers were put on the payroll, turning a blind eye or actively helping the mobsters they were supposed to be arresting. This was the Mafia's golden age. The flood of money changed everything. It allowed them to invest in other criminal enterprises and even legitimate businesses, laundering their illicit profits. The leaders, men like Capone in Chicago and Luciano in New York, became celebrities. They were untouchable, living in lavish hotels, wearing the finest suits, and surrounded by lawyers who could beat any charge. They weren't just thugs anymore. They were executives, chairmen of a dark corporation. The structure, the wealth, and the political influence they gained during these 13 years solidified their power in a way that would have been impossible otherwise. The Mafia had never been stronger, never richer, and never more embedded in the fabric of American society. Prohibition would eventually end in 1933, a failed experiment acknowledged by the government itself. The speakeasies closed and the legal breweries reopened. But the damage was done. The genie was out of the bottle, and it could not be put back. The law that was meant to end crime had instead created a permanent, powerful, and deeply entrenched criminal empire. The Mafia was now a fixture of American life, a shadow government built on bootleg whiskey. Its leaders, the new Godfathers, would continue to shape the underworld for decades to come. Thanks for watching. Be sure to subscribe for our next episode, where we dive into the rise of the Godfathers themselves.